In best decks, in worst support, no cards shall escape my report. It's time for part 3, I think. There's gonna be a cool picture at the end of this one, so make sure you stick around. This is the ideal way to keep audience retention. Crystal Beast came in swinging this year with a structure deck and a booster pack providing 15 goddamn cards around June, and one more literally as this video was being produced. See? I'm not lazy. I'm functionally late.
He arrives precisely when he means to.
First up, we have a batch of 7 monsters, adapting the anime's extremely contrived BDSM variants of Crystal Beasts, those being the Advanced Crystal Beasts. An adjective which clearly has no meaning in this situation. For the sake of being upfront and as brief as possible, they're not good. First of all, depending on Advanced Dark being on the field means they're about as vulnerable as pre-support Malefics, which is not something you ever want to be compared to. Second, all their support effects only relate to other Advanced Crystal Beasts, so you need to heavily focus on these in case you even plan on using them in the deck. And third, most of their effects are third. As per usual, Carbuncle and Pegasus are fine, comparatively. Meagle is there just for the necessarily tacked-on search effect, and the rest of them are simply not good enough to warrant dying along with a field spell. The field spell, which was made 10 years ago and did not account for the sub-archetype ever being made, so there's almost no synergy present here. There are a select few decent plays these things can pull off in combination with the ult support, but for the most part, you run them in a build aiming to shit out a Rainbow Dragon as fast as possible, as they at least give you access to more Crystal Beasts material. As a GX brand ambassador until the end of time, I'm happy these finally saw the light of day, but they might be a little too faithful to the anime for the modern game. It's bizarre that they waited this long to make them after jumping the gun and printing Rainbow Dark Dragon in 2007 and then Advanced Dark in 2012 without giving any attention to what the gimmick was actually primarily composed of. This is what you call striking while the iron is at absolute zero. Rainbow Over Dragon was a cool if uneventful retrain of the classic, so to say that yet another level 12 Ultimate Crystal Beast Fusion Over Dragon that's even overer than the last one was a surprise would be an understatement. Ultimate Crystal Beast Rainbow Dragon Overdrive has a very handy summoning condition that basically assures you'll be controlling it alongside the original Over Dragon if you manage to summon Rainbow Dragon during the duel. It makes up for its two predecessors' underwhelming attack boost abilities by essentially hitting the field with 11,000 attack and retains the mass shuffle effect, but upgrades it by giving you back any Crystal Beast monsters you might have banished for the summon. I think it's fair to say that this is what Over Dragon should have been in the first place, but I'm not complaining about the rework. With the amount of laser-focused effort you need to put in to prioritize summoning Rainbow Dragon and Crystal Beast instead of building a sturdy field of generic Exodeck monsters, you should be awarded with something of this caliber. It's not a card the deck needed for its overall playability, but definitely for the theatrics, so I think it's pretty welcome in this archetype. For the back row we have 4 spells and 4 traps, so let's try going through them quickly, lest we want the Crystal Beast section of this video to be longer than some archetype archives. Crystal Aegis is definitely the least impressive one out of the spell bunch, but it's still okay. Swapping a Crystal Beast for a token provides some unconventional combo setup as well as materials for Rainbow Dragon. The graveyard effect can lead to some solid extension, but tends to require more setup than it's worth. Awakening of the Crystal Ultimates effectively searches any card in the archetype or puts any Crystal Beast monster onto the field from almost anywhere, and it's a quick play so it can also be used for interruption. The cost of revealing a Rainbow Dragon can turn it into an occasional brick, and you're definitely not activating it while you already control one, but otherwise it's one of the best cards in the deck. Rainbow Bridge of the Heart is so good it almost feels like a joke. Field presence, consistency and removal all in one searchable card that opens up so many combos for the archetype that it basically props it up to relevancy all on its own. This is a 3-off in any variant of the deck and probably one of the best support cards ever made, period. Even if I wasn't rushing to get through these, there wouldn't be much more to say about it cause it's just that good. The extremely recently released Golden Rule reminds me of that time when Cyber Dragons were getting so many good support cards that you were getting choice paralysis from trying to figure out which ones to run. Regardless, this is a pretty good card, especially if you take Carbuncle as target and use it for a double Pegasus summon. That is the most effective play here, because anything besides that is just putting bodies on the board, which can still be pretty good given this archetype. Taking 2 targets exclusively from the deck can be a problem if the ones you need happen to be anywhere else, but the amount of setup this gives you cannot be understated. Crystal Boon is not very good. I'd be down with it as a spell, but the life point gain is not worth waiting a turn to uncrystallize a couple of monsters. The graveyard effect is just weird because it implies you'll be using Cobalt Eagle's effect for deck stacking like some kind of psychopath. Don't play this one. Rainbow Bridge of Salvation has a comically unachievable condition for its primary Fiber Jar effect and a great banish effect in the graveyard. You run 1 copy of this with Foolish Burial Goods and a couple of field spells and save the first effect for the element of surprise when you're putting the card into Sacred Beast or something. Crystal Brilliance turns most of your monsters into genuinely formidable beaters, and the second effect can save you in a pinch during the battle phase, neither of which are things Crystal Beasts are particularly concerned about. It doesn't help you extend combos, nor does it make Rainbow Dragon come out faster. Although it seems to me Rainbow Dragon already came out. You know, cause the card is released. And it's gay! Finally, there's Crystal Miracle, the counter trap that makes up for the time there was a counter crystal trap that wasn't a crystal counter trap. And it's pretty damn good. Easy negates, combos incredibly well with a bunch of back row, and extends your plays with a graveyard effect. They didn't have to put this much utility onto a counter trap, but they did it anyway because Crystal Beasts will get the best archetypal spells and traps in history before getting a single decent new monster as a playmaker. Which I think describes the entire MO of Crystal Beast support. Some of the best and most consistent back row you'll ever get your hands on, if you can deal with the prerequisite of having to rely on monsters from 2007 to make most of your plays. If anything, you can say the deck has a metric crapton of possible variants to pilot, be it Rainbow Dragon Turbo, Conclave Control, Swarming and Combo Focus, hybrids with Tri-Brigade, pure advanced Crystal Beasts if you wanna lose. Basically, the support has been so varied that anyone can find their own preferred way of playing the deck, regardless of competitive viability, which is actually not something they have a lack of with all the new cards, so I'd consider this batch a pleasantly playable surprise, even if half the cards in it aren't something you wanna run. Marching steadily against the inevitable flow of time, the majestic Crystal Beasts are still trucking on with these same ancient playmakers they've had since day one, whether you like it or not, and at this point you gotta respect them for pulling it off this well. This is no place for retrains, this is their home. Anyway, Vendreds! They can't fuck up for the 5th time in a row, right? Scar of the Vendred is good. With all the ways to dump monsters in this deck, he's by far the easiest way to search Vendred back row, which other than all the ritual spells, also includes a few pieces of interruption. His level is fittingly high given the monsters you'll be ritual summoning, and while his recursion does come with the standard banish zombie requirement, it helps immensely when building your field. You're not building a lot of it, but you take what you can get. Vendred Scavenger is complete garbage dookie dog shit. I know we're all used to it at this point with Vendreds, but yes, this is yet another miserable ritual monster that only serves as a vehicle for the inherited effects and no real redeeming qualities of its own. Like, wow, attack boost by tributing a monster? And it's a quick effect? Good job guys, we're almost catching up to the standards of 2015. The recovery is whatever, it gives you a bit more field presence but doesn't really do anything with it, which I guess does count as play extension when it comes to this deck. I don't care that it's Nemesis, I'm cool with that part. I care that the Vendred rituals are total crap for absolutely no reason. Well, if anything, they're keeping up the trend of embarrassing ritual monsters and absurdly good ritual spells with Ravenous Vendred. Fetching a material straight from the deck onto the field is simultaneously ridiculous and the least they could have done to help this archetype. It directly addresses some of their biggest problems, those being the on-field requirement for the inherited effects and the general lack of consistent access to their materials. The fact that it can't use Scavenger from the graveyard initially seems unnecessary and weird, until you realize it's there just to mention its name so you can search the card with pre-prep. Shit like this makes me feel like the person in charge of designing the Vendred ritual monsters and the one designing their spells are not allowed contact with each other. So, do these 3 cards finally bring a tinge of playability to modern Vendred builds? Sure, I guess. Scar is a nice extender and Ravenous is a fantastic spell, which in combination with the usual good stuff from the zombie engine can result in somewhat formidable fields. The deck's best playmaker is still Unizombie as opposed to any of their monsters, and you only run Scavenger because you need it to search the spell with pre-prep, but yes, things are objectively a little better now. They didn't salvage this deck in the way I wanted them to, but to be fair, that's hardly achievable outside of a full remake, so I guess making them slightly more synergetic with your average zombie combo deck is the next best thing. I don't know who at Konami mandated this Fisher-Price my first ritual type of design on the monsters, but it's fine Slayer, I still think you're cool. Wrapping up this year's support report, we involuntarily have to look at a couple of Red Eyes monsters. Did you know the Serbian dub of Yu-Gi-Oh! Referred to Red Eyes Black Dragon as just Infernal Dragon? They probably did it to match the lip flaps more easily. However, they also referred to Blue Eyes White Dragon as Blue Eyes Blue Dragon, presumably because it was blue the entire time. Red Eyes Black Meteor Dragon is interesting. It's a super easy summon which is also surprisingly generic, playable in anything running high-level vanillas. They did a cute thing here where it's level 6 by default, so it can be used as material for the Comet Fusion, but also turns into a level 7 so you can overlay it. In Red Eyes, it's a quick body on the field for Xyz plays, along with setting up the graveyard, which is something they appreciate, but also have several other tools that do the same thing. Searching Red Eyes Fusion a turn after it hits the graveyard is certainly a choice of effect, so while it does put out all the Red Eyes Fusion monsters, along with some other cards, it takes a bit to get going and you have to commit your entire turn to the card when you play it. It's good, not great, I don't know about the potential, don't ask me about it. The other card in this brief lineup is Red Eyes Soul. This might be one of the weirdest ways a card ever spawned out of existing media, acting as a reference to a specific moment in a duel between Yugi and Joey where Red Eyes got its hand and wing blown off by Rocket Warrior and lost 1500 attack. What's next? You're gonna print Harpy Ladies affected by Time Wizard? Summoning a Red Eyes from the deck on the opponent's turn is only good when you're desperate for field presence and you're convinced it's not about to get promptly ran over. The burn effect was funny when you had access to Verte Anaconda, which led to a 2-card FTK combo, but sadly, or gladly, that's no longer the case, so I can find very little reason to put this into anything. If this is what you call soul, I'd rather play something soulless. And that was the annual Red Eyes output. Honestly, I'm just over it at this point. I don't have anything clever to say. Konami didn't care, and neither do I. What is this? Black-winged assault dragon? This is just Wolfrayet after running through a chicken coop. I'm really glad Blackwings are getting some attention lately. It's a really small, underrated, obscure little archetype. Get this shit off my screen. Anyway, here is the promised cool image as consolation.